Hello friends, welcome back to my channel Knowledge Compiled Part 18. Friends, in this video, we will give you the insight of Sino-Vietnamese War based on Edward O. Dowd book. Right? So let's continue our journey. Friends, the Sino-Vietnamese War of 1979 saw the PLA attempt to blend political work with military strategy, facing challenges in influencing Vietnamese soldiers. Despite historical success, psychological operations faltered against the determined Vietnamese resistance. The conflict revealed the inadequacy of slogan and the limitation of political work in warfare complex realities. So let's check out the first topic, that is about the complex relationship between PLA and Vietnamese people. First, under this, the first point is about the political campaign to win support. Friends, PLA invested significant effort in a mass work program to gain political support from Vietnamese civilians during the invasion. The program aimed to expand the army political influence and support the successful completion of the mission. Next, about the historical and ideological context. Friends, political warfare had a long-standing tradition within the PLA, dating back to the Gutian Congress resolution of 1929. The PLA leadership was ideologically conditioned to believe in the international unity of the working class, fostering the belief that the Chinese were in Vietnam to help the Vietnamese people. Next, about the differentiation between the leaders and population. Friends, directives emphasized differentiating between Vietnamese leader, particularly the Le Duan clique, and the Vietnamese population. Soldiers were instructed to show respect and compassion for civilians and to explain this policy to the Vietnamese. Next, about the regulations and the policies. Friends, the General Political Department, in conjunction with the Military Affairs Commission, issued regulations outlining the political basis for the war and the policies to win Vietnamese support. The emphasis on the three main rules of the discipline and the 8 points of attention was part of the troop education. Next, about the preparation by the specific units. Friends, Unit 56041 in Kunming military region, preparing for its task in Vietnam, organized mass work team at the company level and studied Mao's work on civil-military relation. Senior cadres who had experience in the Sino-Indian War of 1962 lectured troops on conducting mass work in a foreign country. Next, about the discipline and respect. Friends, additional rules were established to guide PLA units once they entered Vietnam, emphasizing respecting Vietnamese homes, crops, and property. Bivouacking in the field and maintaining discipline were strategies to minimize conflict with the local populace. Next, about the positive outcome of mass work. Friends, Unit 56041 report claimed success, indicating that the local people did not resist the regiment and the soldiers' action helped gain control of the population. The PLA gained valuable intelligence by convincing people to return home. They identified potential hostilities more easily. Next, about the mass work in the Yunnan military district. Friends, Yunnan military district deployed teams to conduct mass work, providing assistance to Vietnamese villages, treating the sick and wounded, and disarming Vietnamese encountered in the mountains. Next, about the positive and negative soldiers' reaction. Friends, some soldiers were initially resistant to the idea of mass work in a foreign country, believing it was a waste of time. Unit 33762 faced ideological resistance but went on to perform numerous mass work activities, earning positive feedback from a Vietnamese women. Next, about the Vietnamese perception and PLA reputation. The Vietnamese government pamphlet portrayed the PLA as a great army of crime, citing instances of brutality and during the invasion. Despite effort to build a positive relationship, some elements of the PLA engaged in destructive acts, undermining the mass work campaign. Next, about the challenges in the unity of army and people. Friends, while the principle of unity of army and the people remained theoretically sound, the 1979 campaign revealed growing friction between soldiers and civilians. Friends, a nuanced view of the PLA effort to win over the Vietnamese population during the war, highlighting both successes and challenges in the implementation of mass work program. Moving next we'll discuss about the YG Dijun, that is disintegrate the enemy. Friends, in this video, we'll go ahead and we'll provide the insight into the PLA political campaign known as YG Dijun, which translates to disintegrate the enemy. So let's start the first point, that is about objective of YG Dijun. Friends, the primary goal was to influence enemy officers and soldiers to surrender, revolt, desert, or lay down their arms. The Chinese believe that by weakening the resolve of Vietnamese soldiers through political operations, the military task of defeating them on the battlefield would become easier. Next, about the preparation for political campaign. Friends, preparation for the political campaign began in December 1978, involving repairing loudspeakers, distributing paper and ink, and providing troops with standard Vietnamese phrases to memorize and use in battle. Propaganda teams were formed to disseminate information to convince Vietnamese soldiers to surrender. Next, about the training Chinese soldiers. Friends, soldiers were instructed to surround the Vietnamese soldiers and call for their surrender. If the Vietnamese soldiers surrendered, Chinese troops were told to treat them well and persuade them that the Chinese cause was just. And political officers emphasized the importance of differentiating between Le Duan clique and Vietnamese people. Next, about the challenges and reservations. Friends, some soldiers resisted the idea of political operation, believing that military actions alone would be more effective. Concerns were raised about the difficulty of conducting political operations in a foreign language and doubts about the effectiveness of political effort on well-indoctrinated Vietnamese. Next, about the language barrier and personnel. Friends, overseas Chinese with Vietnamese language skill were assigned to combat units. Although their motivation for hazardous frontline work was often low, the leadership attempted to address the language problem through political education and careful leadership. Next, about the brutality instilled in the soldiers. Friends, soldiers were trained with the brutal mindset, viewing the enemy with three looks, that is, contempt, disdain, and hostility. Awards system encouraged high Vietnamese body counts, potentially undermining the goals of the political campaign. Next, about the Vietnamese resistance and frustration. Friends, when the battle commenced, Chinese forces faced strong Vietnamese resistance, leading to frustration and anger among PLA soldiers. Vietnamese civilians taking up arms and hiding among refugees complicated the application of the three distinction policies. Next, about the abuse of prisoners. Friends, instances of mistreating of prisoners were reported, with frustration leading to brutality. The award system, frustration with high cost of tactical operation, and failure of the political program contributed to the mistreatment of the prisoners. Next, about the frustration and brutality. Friends, veterans described the war as incredibly bloody and savage, expressing surprise at the huge cost of victory. Some soldiers expressed frustration and resorted to brutal action such as mistreatment of prisoners and destruction of Vietnamese town. Next, about the destruction of cities and retaliation. Friends, before withdrawing from Lang Son, Chinese forces brought in students to destroy the city as a form of revenge. Soldiers took delight in the destruction, viewing it as a goodbye kiss to the Vietnamese. Friends, the challenges and the complexities of implementing a political campaign alongside the military operation, highlighting the impact of frustration, brutality, and the unexpected strength of Vietnamese resistance on the PLA effort during the 1979 Sino-Vietnamese War. Next friends, we'll discuss about some failure of YG Dijun. Friends, the YG Dijun operation and underscore the several reasons for the ineffectiveness during the 1979 war. First is about Vietnamese ideological training. Friends, Vietnamese soldiers were strongly motivated by ideological training, making them less susceptible to Chinese effort to influence the sway or to sway them. The ideological commitment of Vietnamese forces proved to be a significant obstacle to the success of the Chinese psychological operations. Next, about the lack of convincing Chinese soldiers. Friends, the PLA struggled to convince its own soldiers that the YG Dijun operation would be effective against a highly motivated foreign force. The failure to instill confidence in their own troops further contributed to the ineffectiveness of the psychological operation. Next reason for the ineffectiveness, the next point is about conflicting incentive system. Friends, the incentive system used to motivate PLA soldiers conflicted with the objectives of YG Dijun. PLA soldiers were simultaneously encouraged to kill and to show mercy and understanding toward the enemy, creating internal contradictions in their approach. Next point, about the historical context of psychological operation. Friends, while the Maoist PLA had successfully employed psychological operations in the past, particularly against warlord and the Kuomintang forces. During the civil war, it proved ineffective against the highly motivated Vietnamese soldiers and civilians. The historical success did not guarantee successes in a different context, especially against a determined adversary like the Vietnam. Moving next point is about limited number of Vietnamese prisoners. Friends, only a small number, that is about 1600 of Vietnamese prisoners of war fell into the Chinese hands, indicating the limited success of the YG Dijun operation. Vietnamese unit generally put up strong resistance contrary to the expectations based on the psychological operation. Next is about naivety in believing slogans. Friends, it includes a retrospective comment from Chinese officer emphasizing the naivety in believing that slogans alone would enable them to win without fighting. This reflects a recognition of the overestimation of the impact of psychological operation on the battlefield. Next, about the conclusion on the political work. Friends, the overall conclusion is that political work, while a crucial factor in making the PLA a moist army, did not prove to be a magic formula for success in the warfare. The attempt to use political work to increase efficiency in the 1979 campaign and the broader Third Indochina War did not yield the desired result. Friends, a critical assessment of the limitation and challenges associated with the PLA reliance on psychological operations, particularly in the specific context of the Sino-Vietnamese War. Friends, here we come to the end of part 18. Please do like, subscribe and share among your friends. Watch as many times as you can and get hold of the subject. Thank you.